regards to preventing griefers, because obviously this is the type of thing to where it sounds very good in practice, and all of a sudden you get one or two guys that want to screw with the other players, and it just, it snowballs out of control, and a whole lot of players, gameplay experiences are ruined because of a few bad apples. And so we've got this concept to where every time you land at a landing zone, whether you go through the public landing zone or your own personal hangar, you have to, just like in the real world, you have to pass through customs. And at customs, there's the concept of whether or not you're actually authorized to carry a weapon into that area. This is also where they would turn you away if you've been banished from that planet. And so if I were to wander over, on a planet that actually had a concept of law and order, this might not apply at all to Nyx, where, if you go in, you just need to, mind your own security. All bets are off. But if you're in a place that's actually got, some level of security, like I said earlier, if it's Terra Prime, as soon as you go to pull your gun, there's going to wind up being an automated turret. It's highly accurate. It's going to stun you. That's it. There's no chance. But in a variety of other places, ArcCorp will probably have a little bit lower end turrets. They're not quite as accurate. They don't actually fire until you fire on someone else, and then only if they don't actually have their weapon pulled or they haven't actually fired at you. And so if you wind up shooting unarmed people in a secure area and you wind up getting caught, then on these planets that have this concept of customs, what you'll wind up having is your license to carry would wind up being revoked, such that the next time you actually come to that planet, and this would probably persist for some number of real-time hours, you wouldn't be able to carry a weapon. And so there's a real penalty applied in terms of I was able to inflict some pain or damage or whatever to another player, but I'm no longer able to do that. We've instantly flipped a switch, and you can't do that for another 24 or 48 hours. And this actually puts you at a real disadvantage, because for the same reasons, like now, imagine having to walk the streets of New York late at night, and you can no longer be armed, and it's extremely dangerous. Similarly, if you wind up...
I mean, the other thing is that we also, since we can't have all the players all in the same room at the same time, we instance stuff. So we matchmake in the instancing. So one of the things we will definitely do in the algorithm is we will try to sort of separate griefers into griefing pools, if that makes sense. So you can grief each other if you like to grief each other, but not necessarily. And it's actually quite easy to do. Quite easy to do. I mean, the system that we have, which is it works the same way in space, but also down on the planets, is you basically go in and out of sort of containers, which is the instance. And so we're always putting you in and out when you go to a new area in space, or the same would probably happen in a big location on a planet side, where you would go into the concourse, and the concourse would be sort of its own sort of area where there'll be multiplayer, and you'd be leaving, say, your hangar, which is not necessarily the same instance of multiplayer, into the concourse. So we can sort of decide who you see. Do you see you're seeing your friends, seeing your enemies, people of similar skill levels, and so that's another sort of tool we can use to kind of essentially make everyone's game experiences as positive as possible. But I mean, I think the real thing to point out is that I would say that there is, we definitely have PvP in the game, and players working together in co-op, but there's, as we've said, there's 90% AI to 10% player population. So if we have 1 million people playing the game, there's going to be 9 million AIs running around simulating in that economy. And so because of that, you can also extrapolate that there'll be a huge amount of encounters that will be AI based, right? So you'll be fighting AI pirates, or if you're a pirate, attacking AI traders or whatever, and so there'll be a fair amount of co-op versus AI, right? Which is what I think if you take a look at what everyone's doing right now in the game in Arena Commander, a fair amount of everyone is playing Vandal Swarm and the sort of single player or the co-op modes, and then there'll also be the player-to-player options in the game. So it's sort of like they'll always. So even though we will try our best, so like players can't grief other players, there'll definitely be like threats and stuff that will be legitimate for you to fight. Like so a mugger tries to mug you in Terra, and you pull your gun in self-defense and take him out. That's fine. You're not going to get in trouble for that. So we're going to have lots of opportunities for you to have sort of fun action and tension in places besides just the player-to-player. And we do allow the player-to-player stuff, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that, when sometimes people think about, oh, well, you're going to have a gun on PlanetSide, well, aren't I going to get griefed by someone? And that's really not the purpose. The purpose of being able to have the weapons down on the planet side or doing the EVA into a derelict ship is really sort of for those sort of environmental encounters, which, I think, there's been some really cool fan videos that have been made about that kind of stuff, and it sort of gives you a sense of kind of what it's going to feel like. And so we're pretty committed to sort of making the world feel alive and reactive in terms of things that you can do and the places you can do, so you don't just go down onto a planet and it's basically a glorified 3D shopping interface. So I think that's the only thing I was going to add to.
Yeah, no, and that was the original design rationale is we didn't want to ever have the landing zones turn into something that you'd seen 100 times before and nothing changes other than the cosmetic effects of the AI. So you'd see, the activities change and you'd see more businessmen because the economy is booming, and you'd see, more criminals when the economy is doing less well. But if none of that can ever directly affect you, except insofar as, commodity prices and the missions and stuff that are available, you're going to lose that entire effect of ever being on edge, of ever being anxious because you kind of screwed around a day ago, you shot another player, and now for the next 24 hours, whenever you land on that planet, you're no longer allowed to carry a gun. And if you pushed it farther, if you actually skirted the rules and a friend of yours, he actually got into that planet and he gave you a gun and you tried to continue the griefing, well, now you just wind up getting, we basically register the fact that you had already had your license to carry revoked. Now you've been caught, griefing, killing a player in a law and order, type of area again. And so now we basically flip a switch and you're literally banished from that planet for the next 24 hours. And so, whereas you could still grief, you would not be able to grief for very long.
Tony, is it true that Mark Skelton has already lost his Area 18 privileges?